And Rauf Aregbesola, the Minister of Interior and former Governor of Osun State, has deleted a post where he appeared to be mocking the defeated All Progressives Congress governorship candidate in Osun State, Gboyega Oyetola. Well, about an hour after the result was announced, the minister posted on his verified Facebook page and Twitter handle where he quoted the book of Daniel in the Holy Bible, chapter 4, verses 17. Well, the post reads in parts, well, this matter is by the decree of the watchers and the demand by the word of the holy ones, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men and giveth it to whomsoever he willeth, and set it up over in the basement of men. Well, a few hours later, there was another post on the minister's Twitter handle asking Nigerians to disregard the earlier post as it was not authorized. The build-up to the election witnessed relationship between Aregbesola and Governor Gboyega Oyetola as the minister opposed the governor's re-election bid. Interesting tweets there. And to help us deep in this conversation, let's now bring in two people. Well, the outcome of the Osun election, of course. We're now being joined by a former member of the House of Representatives, Bimbo Daramola. He joins us live in the studio, as well as Ene Obi, who is the Country Director of Action Aid, and she's joining us from Osogbo. Thank you, Ene, as well as Bimbo, for joining us tonight. And I want to start with you, who is on ground. Of course, we've seen some of the reports that the Situation Room, which you are a part of, have actually released. But before we get into all the details of that election, give us your general assessment of the polls that you witnessed yesterday, especially in comparison to other off-season elections that we had seen leading to this one.
Thank you very much for having me. For this election, I'm happy that I had the opportunity to be on ground. And generally, I think one can say that it's one of the most peaceful elections. It didn't look like it was going to be peaceful a few days to the election. We were not quite sure what was going to happen. But I think a lot of stakeholders, made a huge contribution. I can say that, the security were tops. We had some flashpoints that we're worried about. The security was able to cover that. We had meetings, series of meetings with different stakeholders. We are happy that the IGP himself was on ground during the stakeholders meeting with INEC and all the stakeholders, with traditional rulers. Everybody, had the opportunity to meet together and also, ask for peace, including the political parties. And again, the peace accord was quite helpful. I think we had a very peaceful election. I would say that it is an upward movement, for INEC, and then we will say for the country especially. There were so many things that we were looking at going into the election. One was a major concern about the issues of vote buying. Vote buying, of course, was present in a silent mode, in a more silent mode or salient environment. I think the politicians knew what was coming on board, and so there were presence of vote buying. But I think one of the good things that we can come out of this election and say is that power has gone to the people. The power has gone back to the people, and it's in the hand of the people. But when you want to look at the issues of vote buying, you want to talk about it, you have to also look at the citizens themselves. What are we doing really in terms of an investment into the deepening democracy? If we are accusing politicians, other people are the ones that are taking the money. We agree that there is poverty, but that's both buying and selling is a criminal offense. So there are so many things, and there is a lot of misgovernance that has been happening. If you are taking money from people, how do you query them? The other side that we're looking at very seriously that we're worried about is the beavers. Coming from Anambra election and then going to FCT election and going to Ekiti, I think we are standing on a better footing. So it's a kudos. We want to commend INEC for the great job that I don't know how, maybe because the machines were new at that point, but they are deepening their understanding. And then the preparation by the REC of Osun State and the team before, the training and retraining of the ad hoc staff, that also paid. So we say congratulations to the people of Osun for the way they conducted themselves at the polling units. I can say that about 95% of the area, about 90% had no tension at all. Sometimes you are moving around when you are going to polling units, you will be feeling unease, early in the morning, so those things were key. The other thing that was quite key was the logistics and deployment of INEC officials. And one can also say that, about 95% by 7:30 in the morning, they had deployed. And so a lot has gone on very well.
Okay, I mean, very good observations there and submissions, Ene Obi. But let me come to Bimbo Daramola. Good as the Osun election becoming, an example of what an election should be. How about the spontaneity in uploading results to INEC servers from the polling units? Wouldn't you say that that played an equally great role to avoid the incidents of ballot box snatching or result sheet snatching and the rest? That's for you, Bimbo.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Kingsley. Christian, I'm sorry. I started processing this election and contextualized it. And then a number of P's came to my mind. The P of persons, or personalities involved in the election, the P of political parties, the P of process, the P of the people by themselves, and then the P of power. If I have time at some point in the course of this discussion, I'll probably be talking about all of those. But straight to the question that you asked me, I think the P of process, INEC has done well, and in doing well, first and foremost, to have given us an election that today, reasonably so, a whole lot of people feel that this election bespeaks what the average Osun person wants. Number two, a huge investment keeps going into our elections in this country. When I was in the parliament, one of the things that we advocated very strongly too was for more input of ICT and digitization into our electoral process. So much so that we can cut off ballot stuffing, ballot snatching, and all of those things, and getting the toughies to go snatch ballot boxes. We've been able to do that, and INEC has been able to do that. And I think this is a very, very remarkable achievement by INEC, and also a justification of the fact that the huge resources that this nation has committed into our electoral process, INEC seems to have acted true to type as against what we used to see. And today, going forward, I'm thinking that the justices of the tribunals won't have too much to do anymore.
Well, that is one of the hopes that Nigerians have, especially with the Electoral Act Amendment Bill 2022 as signed by Mr. President. And I want to come back to you, and I want to continue in the same line as what Bimbo had talked about and the question Christian had asked in terms of the electronic transmission of results. Well, there were some complaints when we had our correspondence yesterday. They said some areas that didn't happen. But can you talk to us about generally the technology being deployed by INEC? And you have said, yes, there's been some improvements. But are you optimistic that in the 2023 election, where the election will be general all across the country, that INEC will be able to replicate or even up its game?
I think they should be able to up their game. It's about commitment. And that is why, the civil society is involved. Everybody is involved to make a difference, but we are not government. We can only encourage them. When we go into observation, the Nigerian Civil Society Situation Room deployed observers throughout the local government environment. and we're able to get a lot of feedback. The individual organizations that make up the civil society, Nigerian Civil Society Situation Room, a number of them deploy so many observers, and were able to give us multiple, a lot of reports, because when we are talking to INEC, we have to be evidence-based. We have to be able to look at what is going on. On the issue of the INEC portal, the portal, by 10 p.m. yesterday, almost all the results were in. Almost all the results. I think they held on to a few. Maybe they held on. I don't know what happened, but unlike when we were in Anambra, it was about maybe midnight. We had more than 80% or 85% of the result. But when we are coming in here now to have over 90% of the result turned into the portal already is very commendable. I think the electronic transfer, the transmission that we're talking about, there is a lot that we can do better. Maybe improvement in terms of, how fast things turn around. The beavers had a few places, just very, very few, I can tell you. Beavers is giving more than 90%. When we do the collation of our result, we'll be able to catch exactly what is the percentage of performance. In Ekiti, it was 75%. But when we now getting to Osun, in some of the places, beavers was, shockingly, it was taking less than a minute, some about 30 seconds to accredit, voters, which was really fantastic. We had a few complaints of saying, somebody said it took up to 5 minutes, maybe when they are having problem with identification, but we will definitely get the polling units, the exact spot where they had those complaints, to be able to let INEC can track each of the beavers, and they will be able to tell us what is going on. But a lot of lessons have been learned, and I think, and again, I want to commend the security, because the deployment was really, they were up to the task, and we're happy with the way the monitoring team was also able to rove, and some arrests we were told were made, but we are waiting to see what happened in terms of vote buying.
All right, thanks very much, Ene. Let me turn to you again, Bimbo Daramola, as a former legislator. Why is, Nigeria's election process still very cumbersome, despite the successes in beavers, in, transmitting election results electronically? Why is the space not being expanded to include diasporans, to vote? And why is the election process not being further simplified? People can even vote from the post office and the rest, that is via mails and what have you. Don't you think that all these new additional processes will help, make Nigerian election less cumbersome?
Well, let's first of all agree that things have gotten better. I've been in the political space for about 20 years, and I've seen this steady but sure transition from what was and what is today. If you take your mind back to our days preceding today, I'm talking about 2007, 2003,
1999.
In fact, 2015. No, 2011, when President Yar'Adua actually admitted, as a sitting president, that his elections were flawed. As a gentleman that he was, that would tell you the spectacle that we're confronted with. A whole lot of things would be the reasons to adduce for why our elections are cumbersome. Number one, motive and motivation. Nigerians, particularly the guys seeking power today, are driven by different motives. Most of those reasons and most of those motives are not altruistic. And so there's desperation. So when INEC even wants to do the work and do it well, the desperation of politicians to get in the way of whatever noble intentions that INEC may have. Likewise, the security operatives that Ene just corroborated now, you know that politicians, particularly the ones who have lived under the table and who have acted under the table, particularly the ones that have had power over time, would like to shortcut the system. They want to short-circuit the system in such a way that it would confer an on-hand and an unfair advantage on them. So to that extent, you will see the cumbersome things you talked about. And of course, a lot of people have also alluded to the fact that some places topography, and more than anything else for me, I think is the nature of men going to elections. Elections should be, I mean, when I was DG of a campaign in 2014, I said, I mean, elections should be a coronation of some sort. If you've done well, the people will be willing to reward you. And for people who have not done really well, that's about the time to begin to look for how to tweak and mess up with the system. But by and large, I think the will of the institutions, and we're beginning to see very strong institutions now, and they alluded to the security operatives, and then I have alluded to INEC. So I believe very strongly that the stronger the institutions get, the sharper the resolution of these guys managing these institutions, the better our elections get in the days to come.
Right. You know what, gentlemen, that's Christian as well as Bimbo. We'll come back to you. And Ene, let's head for a quick break. When we come back, we'll have more conversations about the outcome of the Osun elections. To stay with us.
You're welcome back, and you're still watching News Night, reaching you from Nigeria's capital, here in Abuja. I am Christian Omodo.
And I am Makaudi. And of course, the big question is the Osun election victory for the people? Or is their decision influenced or induced in any way? Well, our analysts are still here to help us dissect all of this. And Bimbo, earlier on, you were talking about, extending the electoral space and all of that. But I want to actually go to something I found on social media, by the way, your particular Facebook page, where you talked about the fact that the people of Ekiti State, they are finished spending their 10,000 naira, whereas the people of Osun have made a very good decision. What do you mean by this? Are you saying that vote buying was rife in Ekiti, but it was different here in Osun?
Very much so. This is, I try to keep the election of Ekiti behind me now. I'm moving on to some other things. But if you ask Ene there, and she's alluded to that very variously, that the elections preceding this had serious manifestations of that. And a whole lot of people were apprehended and all of that. If you interrogate the two elections, you will be in a surer position to be able to say, this looks cleaner and that looks a little bit, tainted. But by and large, I am happy to see that the way the Osun people who seem to represent or to reflect the Zambians in 2021, when the then president was, the incumbent president then was sacked, President Chagwa Lungu was sacked, and President Alichima Kainde got back in. You will see a determined people. And I've followed Osun elections for a little bit. In 2014, don't forget that our election in Ekiti precedes one of these off-season elections will precede the Osun elections. I remember that after Dr. Fayemi sought re-election in 2014 and he didn't get it, we now had to go and give some pep of support to Aregbesola, who was also seeking second time at the time. As soon as we are lighted from the boss of the Ekiti State House of Assembly that took us there, Osun people started derogatorily started talking, and then talking about her, saying Osun is Ekiti, or that Osun is not Ekiti. And I felt really bad that people would say that about my state. And again, the question to ask is that if these guys are not living by shoestrings and on survivor instincts, why would people vote this way? And you saw in Ekiti, you saw the kids running around flashing the money that they took. In Osun, you saw a converse situation of people saying, no, we turned back your money. We saw both.
But we still saw pictures of people collecting the same money as well,
well
in Osun State.
Well,
there are people who are arrested for carrying money around. Well, Christian, I think you want to...
let me just go to Ene, because Ene is being on the ground in Osun State. Ene, how much significance did money politics influence the outcome of the Osun election?
I think what is going on is that maybe some parties were giving, but what we saw with a lot of was a lot of enthusiasm on the part of the voters. And I'll tell you how. When they were collecting their PVCs, at the time that we had a meeting with the REC, which was like almost less than 2 weeks before the election itself, and he was giving a briefing to the Nigerian Civil Society Situation Room, he told us that when they started the collection, the PVCs, they decided to deploy it to the ward level. When they took them to the ward level, that they were overwhelmed by those who wanted to collect their PVCs. And for us, we were quite excited about that. That means people want to collect their PVCs because they want to vote. You saw what happened, I think, after the primaries, the kind of money politics that took over the primaries, people got more serious about having the PVCs, because at the end of the day, it will be the vote that will determine who wins the election or not win. And so we appealed to at the time we were having the briefing from the REC of Osun, they had they had moved all the collection to the local government headquarters. We appealed to them to please reopen it, because the distance between the local government headquarters and the collection point, for many will be too much, because we are talking of a place where you are having so many people below the poverty line. Osun is not different from other parts of the country, that there is poverty in the land and people will find it difficult to transport themselves. And we were so happy that they reacted to it positively. They reopened they went back and redeployed to the ward levels, and that allowed so many people. So as at the time we're going into the election, we have over 1.5 million PVCs had been collected. And the voting is showing a voting population of more than 50%. So we have a better turnout in Osun. That showed a lot of excitement. Some people, if you look at the voting pattern, if you go to each of the local government, you see some, PDP and APC were neck to neck. In many places, you see somebody getting higher, you see a lot of competition. Nobody is a pushover in the election. We have to be able to admit that it's not a pushover.
Right, really not a pushover.
The winning gap was not,
Yeah, close to 30,000, especially when you compare it to what we had in 2018, when it was barely 482, about that number that differentiated the two. But, and I want to stay with you real quick right now, since you are on ground, talking about the number of voters and number of votes cast. Yes, we've seen an improvement in this Osun elections. Looking at INEC's data from the number of those who, valid votes at least, that counted, 804,445. That's a huge number. But the concerning factor here is, if you look at the difference between the winner and the second best, which is that of the APC, really close. Yes, close to 30,000 like we spoke about. Well, if you look at the other 14 political parties, all together, they polled about 15,900 votes. All 14 of them. Can we talk about the implication of our democracy looking like a two-horse race between just two parties?
Well, I think there were complaints by the other political parties as well, that the voter inducement, has a lot to do with who they vote for. That kind of visibility is there. I think there is need for more mobilization on the ground, for the other political parties. They may have done their mobilization, but at any point in time, you have to turn it to the voting population. I think when we're doing the debate, we're looking at debates, we look at the first 5, and sometimes people will tell you, why are you picking the first 5? Why not pick everybody and all of that? It depends on the number of posters. We go into baseline before doing, conducting any kind of meeting or any kind of debate. So one will say, we don't know if some of the level of vote buying can be responsible for some of the voting population, but others, you see them. But some people in some places, they took money, but they didn't vote for them. But I think the thing is that we are narrowing down the issue of rigging. Gone are the days of the ballot snatching. Because if you snatch even the beavers, it's useless for you, to take it to another police station or to do thumb printing and so on and so forth. If you take voter's card now, you cannot do thumb printing. So the space is getting tighter. And we hope, when we had a meeting with the DIG, it wasn't, the DIG called all the service chiefs together. When we came on ground here, Situation Room also paid a meeting, visit to the DSS. So the security agencies that have worked in this election is not only the police, but the police, of course, is the lead agency. But we commend all of them, because we saw a lot of them.
Yeah, very well said. Yeah, Ene, would let you go. But just before we round up this discussion, Bimbo Daramola, how much do you think pre-election debate can help, galvanize the people and, move the democratic culture forward?
Well, I think this is a very brilliant question. I was trying to review, and I watched a few of those things, and I was trying to review them shortly after the Osun Decides debate, by a sister station. And I said to myself that this may just be another opportunity for the people who thought they knew these guys to be able to see them in clearer light. For instance, one of the most topical things that people hit Governor Oyetola hard on was the issue of the helicopter they couldn't find. He stuttered when he was answering that question. He just kept on saying that if anybody wanted to know where the helicopter he would always tell them they could come back to see him, and I don't think they took that very. It was booed at that point in time. Now, do you find sorry, let me just close on this.
Very quickly.
You find the governor-elect who was able to reel out, how he gives scholarship and all of that thing, and then the other side kept on disparaging this guy for his dancing skills.
So what you're saying,
and all of that thing.
Debate should be part of our democratic practice here.
Right. While some people were saying the dancing skills,
Bimbo Daramola,
it was
we'll have to say
relatable.
thank you so much, because time really is not our friend.